Quinn Ewers is expected to miss some significant time after suffering what has been reported as a grade 2 AC joint sprain in his right shoulder. OrangeBloods.com, ESPN's Pete Thamel, multiple reports are coming out on this. Steve Sarkisian will be meeting with the media today, where we will get more of a timeline. Malik Murphy came into the game and finished it as Texas was able to hold on for a 1-score win against Houston. Danny, how do we start to reevaluate Texas, the Texas offense, and what the path looks like for the Longhorns the rest of the regular season, assuming that Ewers will be out for a couple of weeks?
The good news is, if you're Texas, I do think you have significantly more talent than everybody else on your schedule. The good news is Malik Murphy had an awesome spring game. Like, he's been there. I think he knows the system. I think he should be able to hand it off to Jonathan Brooks pretty well. The bad news is we don't know how long this is, right? Like, we're uncertain of the time frame. The bad news is with him, you were struggling against Houston, but I definitely felt like they were playing down to that. And then the other piece of bad news, and this is really for Malik Murphy, if he struggles at all, you know what's going to happen. Where's Arch? Where's Arch? Is he ready? Is he ready to go? And that's going to be something that I think Sark is going to have to deal with over the next few weeks. I thought it was one of the big reasons why after the spring game, he could have let it keep going, the competition. He said, no, this is Quinn Ewers' team. And I thought that was a genius move for him to do, especially when we saw Quinn Ewers playing better this year. But I think that's going to be something he's going to have to handle delicately moving forward to make sure everybody's happy, to make sure Malik Murphy is still, like, his confidence is up. But that is going to be the cloud that looms over that Texas program until Quinn Ewers comes back.
I mean, look, they could be in trouble, right? If Ewers gets back healthy, I think they would be a smaller favorite than they were in Red River. But they do have to go, and they have to play Kansas State in 2 weeks. They should beat BYU this weekend because BYU is not good, but they're having an okay year in the first year of the Big 12. I actually don't think Ewers has played all that well aside from the Alabama game. So I'm not sure what the true drop-off is here to Malik Murphy, if Murphy is the player who we saw in a very limited sample in the spring game. But there is a pretty high chance that Ewers is going to miss that Kansas State game in 2 weeks. And Sark is going to need to be in his bag, because that is basically the game that you have to get. Because if you lose to Kansas State, how many losses in Big 12 play does Kansas State have now? Just one, right?
I believe so, yeah. So
Kansas State would have to lose 3 times, because you would lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with them if you lose to them, given the fact you've already lost to Oklahoma. So, like, the Kansas State game is kind of the game to go to the Big 12 title game, because if you win, you can actually lose another ball game and still go as a 2-loss team. Texas doesn't want to be a 2-loss team heading to the Big 12 title game, but still, like, it would get there if they beat Kansas State, I would project. But man, like, I'm also worried about this Texas defense, because they seemingly have a lot of injuries piling up. You look at the snap counts, like, there's a lot of guys here that I don't know who I know who they are as recruits, but like, I don't know who they are as players. And I'm a little worried, because Houston moved it on them a lot more than I thought they should be able to. So this may be a real problem.
I can't believe you're just writing off Oklahoma State's chances like that. They also only have 1 loss in the Big 12. Come on, bud. We've got this ticket. Let's believe in it.
I know. I'm not sure.
Ollie Gordon for
sure
Heisman. Let's throw that one on top too.
But we talked about it all off season when we spent all this time talking about the Texas QB battle and yelling Arch Manning's name 1,000 times.
Arch Manning, Arch Manning, Arch Manning, Arch Manning.
This is why, like, you didn't want the situation to happen, but the silver lining was there's no team probably in the country that has as much depth at the quarterback spot as Texas does. Like, we've talked about it all year. Who's the best quarterback in the SEC? We don't know. Like, who's been the best quarterback in the Big Ten? We don't. Well, it's J.J. McCarthy. But after that, there's a lot of questions about, like, the second best, third best guys. Texas might have 3 better quarterbacks on its roster than they have in the SEC total. So, like, obviously losing Ewers is not a good thing, but you have an excellent backup in Malik Murphy, and somebody who has shown flashes and an ability to be very good. And I don't think we're going to see Arch Manning no matter what. I think it's been pretty clear what the plan has been for him all along. But I do think that this could be worse. Like if you had lost Malik Murphy to the transfer portal, and if you didn't have Arch Manning and you had a more unproven kind of untested backup, Texas would be in a lot more trouble. That said, I'm with you, bud. I don't think this is a little deal. I do think it's important. I do think Kansas State is playing a lot better in the last few weeks than it had been, and they are a much more dangerous team now that you don't have Ewers. As far as Ewers is concerned, like this is the second year in a row. It's the same injury. How does this impact his draft stock and his future? Because, like you said, he played great against Alabama. He's been good the rest of the season, but he hasn't been spectacular. Now he's got the shoulder injury for the second year in a row. You wonder how his evaluation from NFL teams is going to look after this season. And if, maybe, I mean, this could bring in, if things don't go, if he doesn't heal up or the evaluation isn't great, we could see a situation where Quinn Ewers is still in college next year. Like at this time last year, most of us thought Bo Nix would be gone and Michael Penix would be gone. Both came back. So who knows what the situation is going to be for him long-term.
In 3 games of non-conference play, Rice, Alabama, Wyoming, 8 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. In 4 conference games since then, Baylor, Kansas, Oklahoma, Houston, 5 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. The play in general has not been at the very top of the sport, but some of that also is the identity of this Texas team, which, as we've talked, I mean, Danny, like you mentioned, just hand it off to Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks has been excellent. We made him a midseason All-American for a reason. The outlook for this Texas team moving forward is, like you mentioned, about a little bit imperfect, but I'm going to say that I was unimpressed by Malik Murphy's first impressions when he was thrown into the fire, but you were also thrown into the fire. This is the most important week for Sark, for Malik Murphy. And you know what? For Arch Manning. Like, I'm not just trying to gas this up right now, but what happens if Murphy stinks? Like, what happens if you're going out there against either the next 2 opponents, BYU or Kansas State, and you couple bad interceptions, and you do need to go to the next man up on the depth chart, which just happens to be your prize recruit. Like this is one of the most important weeks of practice that I think Texas is going to have, because at least they're going to have the knowledge of how long it's going to be out. And so the reporting says not season ending, but I'm going to say at least a couple weeks, right? You're not going to be rushing him back, throwing him back into the equation. You've got to almost think that for the next 3 games, maybe more, you're going to be functioning with Malik Murphy as your QB1 and your Arch Manning as your backup if things don't go well or Murphy gets hurt.
Totally. The other thing here is I'm not sure that Kansas State matches up all that well with Texas. Like the way Kansas State plays their defense and the way Sark schemes stuff, they just hit shot play after shot play on them last year and schemed up runs really well. Like Kansas State had no answer for their unbalanced looks really for the second year in a row. So there may, sometimes styles make fights, and there may just be something with the way Kansas State runs their defense and how they set their front and their back end, and the way Sark likes to use all these different formations and whatnot. It just creates things that are hard to match up with. And Murphy, is there any real reason to think that Murphy is worse at hitting some of these shot plays than Ewers? I guess the limited sample of Houston, but again, we have the equally limited sample of the Texas spring game. From which opposing coaches were like, hey, let's go try to get this guy to jump in the portal. And he stayed. And for Texas, thank God that he did. On the other side, and we'll get to this in big game breakdown, Kansas State's still not throwing the ball that well. They're running the ball. Who has run it on Texas this year?
Nobody.
Kind of nobody.
Yeah.
So if your concerns for Texas are now quarterback and back end because they're really dinged in the secondary, I don't know exactly how well suited Kansas State is to exploit that.
Do you guys think we see Arch Manning?
No.
No.
Not at all.
Not unless Malik gets hurt.
Yeah.
He better play well. I'm with Chip.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't think he's going to red. Do you think they're going to he doesn't need the red shirt.
I think the plan is to redshirt him.
I know, but he doesn't
But
need
you get 4 games.
Remember? Right. I think we'll see him.
Yeah.
I think Sark is going to game plan around Malik Murphy's strengths. And Malik Murphy is a very talented player, and Malik Murphy is going to play very well, given a week to prepare for a game instead of being thrown into an offense he wasn't suited to run yet.
Right. And that is what I'm going to give Malik Murphy is thrown into that spot on the road in that game,
Mm-hmm.
which was not even supposed to be that close. The fact that I think his first pass sailed like 30 yards in the air. I mean, he almost hit the sky cam. The dude was jacked up to get in there. So I understand.
There's this unknown, and I think you see this happen. It kind of reminds me of the NFL when we get so caught up in the preseason, like, ooh, this guy's going to be awesome because he lights it up in the preseason. Spring games are very much like that. Sometimes you hit gold because a guy did, like Tyson Bagent, looked pretty
1-0, baby.
Bears. Yeah. And then you get like a DTR who, in the Browns preseason, everybody's like, ooh, he could take over the starting role. And then he doesn't play well, doesn't even retain it. They go back to PJ Walker. Like, it can be a false sense of security, or it could be a true, indicator of how good this. I just don't trust it. So we'll see, because I'm not going to put much stock in coming off the bench either. It's a tough spot to be in, but I think it's important he plays well.
To be fair, though, even while at UCLA, DTR always had incredible NFL preseason QB energy. That's just what his entire game has been for years.
And look, I don't want to dive any deeper into this because I do hope that Malik Murphy, it was really cool to see him stay when other coaches wanted him to go. But Sark also might have schemed up some stuff to have him look good in the spring game. Gas him up a little
play
bit.
caller, and that's what good play callers do. They'll work to their quarterback's strengths. I think you have to feel like he's going to do that.